Okay, well, hello scholars. Welcome to Module 5. I get to introduce Module 5 today. I'm sort of translucent, but you're just going to have to deal. This module is being done by me and by Doug Fuchs, and I want to give you a chance to learn about what we're going to do. So this is kind of a summary of what we're going to talk about. I'm just going to go through it in pieces. So first of all, I want to review briefly what you've been talking about so far in the modules you've done. And you've looked at different ways to think about intensive intervention, right? You've thought, though, specifically about the children with the most severe and persistent academic and behavioral problems. And you've thought about ways to provide intensive intervention. And there were kind of two ways that we kind of characterized it. One is sort of data-based individualization, using general outcome measures and mastery measurement to help us improve students' outcomes. And the other one is single case design, right? So these are the ways that you've learned now for Module 2, 3, and 4 to intensify intervention. So you think about this as highly individualized, which makes sense. You have a student with a very unique academic or behavioral need, and then you have an intervention. That's a unique combination of practices you think will improve outcomes for that particular student. And that's what an intensive intervention is. The purpose of this module is to make you think a little bit further. I'm going to describe why that might not be all. So why maybe that's not all. Here we go. So think about some of the work that your mentors do. And if you think carefully about it, they design programs. If you think about what a program is not individualized in the same way we've been talking about in terms of DBI. Let me talk to you about that. So you might then have, in the case of a program, a student who has a generally applicable academic behavioral need. It wouldn't be something that just applies to that student. It would be something that applies to a whole class of students. So that's different than what we talked about before. And you might come up with an intervention that's a set of practices that would be generally effective for students. And that then becomes the intervention. But is it individualized? No. And so then we ask the question, is it intensive? And one answer could be no. We're not saying, though, that it is. That's just one possible answer. Let me give you some examples of the way that some of the researchers in NCLII might characterize this. And I want to be clear that these are all academic examples because that's what I know best. You're going to get to do some stuff with behavior as well, but I just want to be clear. The intention isn't to just focus you on academics, okay? But these are the examples. So here are a couple examples of ways people intensify that aren't the same as what we've been learning about. So one way that you could intensify is to take a program that's generally effective and make changes that would apply to lots of students. So for example, Mike Coyne and Deb Simmons have done work where they've shown that making relatively minor changes to students' programs by, say, increasing the number of times the students repeat a lesson and adapting the length of the lessons to the student need, they've shown great improvement in students, but not just one student, in whole classes of students. Another way to think about it would be to look at a program, creating a program that should work for people with a specific behavioral phenotype. Like there are characteristics of certain people that we should use and their needs, we should use those to think about the intervention. Chris Lemons has done this with people with Down syndrome, children with Down syndrome, and he's developed reading interventions that are designed to be responsive to the needs of people with Down syndrome. And so, but that again, yes, that's individualized, but it's not individualized in the way we've talked about with data-based individualization. It's individualized at a different level. Another example would be, oh, I gotta go here, sorry. Another example would be identifying aptitude by treatment interactions. This is a term you're gonna encounter in your career more than one time. An aptitude by treatment interaction is the idea that we can find classes of people who need a certain kind of intervention. And if we have people who have one type of intervention, people have another type of intervention, if we can match the right things, we get better improvement. So let's say we have person A, okay, and we have person B. And person A has a particular need. So the need is, let's say, need A. And person B has need B. And we would create, a lot of times, just one intervention. But if we could find a way to create an intervention, I'm just going to write int A, an intervention B, we could find that students who get intervention A do well. If they get intervention B, maybe not so well. On the other side, students who get intervention B do well, check. And if they're in intervention A, they maybe don't get the same level of success. This is called an aptitude by treatment interaction. Okay? And that's an important idea in the field for you to know about because it's going to come up a lot. And so you could identify aptitude by treatment interactions, which I'll talk about for a second more while I erase this darn board. Okay, so an example of this is Kristen McMaster and colleagues have done work where they've shown that there are different types of reading comprehension needs, and that there might be not such a huge number of different kinds of reading comprehension needs, but there might be people who need one kind of reading comprehension support, and people might need one other kind. But it's not lots and lots of kids. It's not individualized at that individual level. Last thing I'll talk about is one other way to intensify is to create interventions that are generally effective by applying knowledge of human cognition in ways that we have as educators not done before. And this work is the kind of work Sarah Powell has done, Marcia Barnes has done, and I do. For example, Sarah has worked on equal sign. Equal sign is not something that's been taught very much in American schools, and Sarah can tell you about that. But she developed interventions to focus on that with good effects. But they're generally effective. We might focus on them for just our tier 3, our intensive kids, but they could be generally applicable. The same is true of my work. So I work on how kids read long words. There's not a lot of data on how kids read long words, although there are lots of programs that say they know. And so I've been trying to figure out the best way to do that using knowledge about how we read from human cognition. But the approach I'm hoping to come up with in the end, yeah, it's probably not going to be designed just for an individual kid. It's going to be designed for a whole class of students, a whole group of students. So the question becomes then, are we actually doing intensive intervention? And this reflects a sort of, it's not a debate because everyone agrees that we want to help kids. So it's not a problem in that way. But it's a question about the way in which we individualize. Okay? And it reflects this idea in psychology between ideographic and nomothetic. Okay? You don't need to use these words in your everyday vocabulary, although at the next NCLII meeting, I would be very excited to talk with you and have you refer to these words. No, you shouldn't do that. It's a terrible idea. So these are two ways to think about this. And the idea of ideographic is that it is about that individualization. That's DBI, database individualization. That's making something specific to a specific person. In nomothetic, well, that's about designing something that's based on, here it says, universal characteristics, general principles of learning. Generally what we know about what works for people. So you've got ideographic, that's individualized. And we've got nomothetic, and that relies on the idea that many people learn the same way. Marcia Barnes said at one point, there are only so many ways we can teach a kid to read. There are only so many ways human cognition can work. And if you think about that, maybe that's true. But on the other hand, maybe you get the best results by focusing on specifically what one student needs. And isn't, after all, that the focus of special education? So that's the question. I set it up. Let's figure it out. By the way, we're not going to solve this problem at the end of this module, but this is a cool opportunity for you to think about it. So what are we going to do? So it's me and it's Doug. I'm going to be doing most of the instructional pieces, talking with you online and so on, having the office hours. But Doug will be involved, and he's going to show you some really interesting things about the history of this, and I think you'll enjoy that. So we've designed a unique sort of module. First thing we're going to do is we're going to have you read a couple articles. They're not going to be particularly long, or we'll have you read parts of them that makes it a little bit less long. Then you're going to watch Doug talk about this stuff. Doug knows a lot about this precise topic, and we wanted him to be the one to share it with you. He's going to be able to tell you about how this all got started. I'm excited myself to get to watch that. The really unique thing about this module is we have asked a bunch of people to help us. So we've asked a bunch of scholars to tell us what do they think about this difference between idiopathic and nomothetic approaches. Some of you may know Stan Dino. In fact, you should all know Stan Dino. Stan agreed to talk with us about his work and how it plays into this dichotomy. And some of the scholars, some of the researchers in the consortium, like Mike Coyne and Marcia Barnes, agreed to talk with us, as well as folks who do very good work outside of it, including Lee Swanson and Deb Simmons. And we're going to have some more as well, so I'm going to just stop there with the list. Once you watch these videos, you're going to meet with a group of 3 to discuss just one of the videos. Your task will be to summarize it, add comments about it, and questions about it, and post all of that online. And the last thing you'll do is participate in a small group online call using WebEx. It's not a phone one. It's going to be used on WebEx so we can see each other. That will give you your opportunity to discuss the module. What are you going to have to do? What's the product? Number 1, post that summary, the comments, the questions on Moodle. That is almost the only assignment. But number 2 is I want you to use the discussion board to discuss and pleasantly argue. In other words, we would like for the first time this year for you to actually use the discussion board, okay? And maybe you won't, but we're going to give it a try, because in your career you're going to be forced to use discussion boards, and maybe we together can find out the way to do it, or maybe not. Okay, a couple notes. 1, mistakes were made. So in the process of this, there have been some technical challenges as we've been making the videos. And so I just want to acknowledge that some of the videos are not high in quality, and I apologize for that. Second thing is that I made the mistake in labeling things. At some point I thought it was idiopathic. It's not, it's idiographic. So you'll hear the word idiopathic used, and that's just my fault. So mistakes were made, mostly by me. So, you know, you can blame me when you see me next and tell me what a terrible job I did. Okay, or don't. You can tell me it was good too. Also, I just want you to think about sort of what this module is about and how we would like it to go. It's a process. It's an opportunity for you to think broadly. You've been learning a lot of details this year, a lot of fundamental skills. This one is about the big picture. This is about thinking about your career in a broad sense. Think about the work your mentors do. We're really excited to give you that opportunity. So let's not squander it. Think broadly. This is your chance to, I don't know, like, you know, actually like, you know, discuss, you know, like you did in college, like on a Friday night in somebody's dorm room. Well, okay, I did that several times, but probably you didn't. In any case, like, it's an opportunity to think and discuss with your peers. And I want you to really, as I already said, get into it. Some of you probably know Reddit. It's a website that has these discussion boards, and they get very intense. I'd like you to kind of think about how you can use the discussion board as a place for this kind of work. And then last, I want to acknowledge ahead of time that we're using WebEx. I don't know how well it's going to work. So we'll give you task analysis to help you log on, but I just want to acknowledge that might be one source of difficulty. We hope that you find this module interesting. We think that the way we've designed it shouldn't put too big a burden on you for this point in the semester. And I'm excited to get started with you. So welcome to Module 5.